Industry players are trying to get closer to their customers these days because they have realized that driving their customer experience and kind of dictating how the customer experience should look like and managing that more actively actually brings business success. In the old world, you were making money through selling the car and then somehow hoping that after 3 years' time, somebody's coming back and would buy from your brand again. I wouldn't go that far that I would say that kind of data is a new fuel and everything is data, but certainly data will help to identify new sources of business. This is kind of old school marketing, that you are just pushing messages out there and you hope that they hit somebody. What consumers of the future want is a true dialogue.
Hi, welcome to the Experience Cafe. My name is John, and today we're going to be talking about what's happening in direct consumer in terms of key trends. And to discuss the topic today, I have my esteemed colleague Jens Sulek. Jens, do you want to give us a quick introduction around who you are and why you're qualified to talk about direct consumer?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me, John. So my name is Jens. I'm currently the co-lead of IBM iX in DACH. And before that, I was part of the automotive industry for 16 years. And after that, I was with McKinsey for 3 years. And I helped marketing, sales, and service organizations with growth and creating new experiences. And one part of that was also the shift into direct to consumer. And we see this a lot at the moment happening also in automotive. And very happy to give some insights and also some background stories around that topic.
Fantastic. And of course, what's happening in automotive is also happening in other consumer-based industries, right?
Yes.
And so I'm looking forward to getting further into this topic. But before we do that, tell me 2 truths and a lie about yourself.
All right. So you, there's definitely some automotive going on in my life. So the first fact is that I have a professional racing license. The second fact is that I used to be the CMO of Porsche in Europe. And the third fun fact is that my half-brother is the president of Bosnia-Herzegovina. Now, guess what is wrong?
Okay. Well, governor of Herzegovina, you said. All right, I'm going to say that's probably true, and I'm going to go with the professional racing driver qualification as the lie. Is that right?
No, that's true. So I have a professional racing license that I got during my 10 years at Porsche. The lie is actually the president of Bosnia-Herzegovina. The truth behind that story is during the Yugoslavian war, we had a refugee taken into our family. And his name is Cemal Bijedic. That is actually the name of the former president of Bosnia-Herzegovina, because he is actually a grandchild of the former president of Bosnia-Herzegovina, which we found out only after 1.5 years that he was living with us, because he was in fear that somebody would find out. So okay. quite a story behind that as well.
Interesting. And where's he now?
He's back in Sarajevo. And funnily, he's also now running his own digital agency in Sarajevo. And there's still very strong ties between our families, and I'm in direct contact with him going on.
Fantastic. All right, so let's dive into direct to consumer. What's driving this trend in the market? I guess, obviously, you've seen in automotive, but I suspect there's some things that are more broadly relevant to other industries as well.
Yeah, so I would say there are 2 main drivers for direct to consumer. One is the cost of sales, which in direct to consumer can be much lower. So if you are eliminating the intermediary between yourself as the manufacturer and the end consumer, you are actually not having to pay some of the margin to your agent or to your intermediary. The other fact is that industry players are trying to get closer to their customers these days, because they have realized that driving their customer experience and kind of dictating how the customer experience should look like and managing that more actively actually brings business success. And I would say these are the two main drivers why this direct-to-consumer topic has evolved so much.
And I guess, so you alluded to the fact that if you can own the customer experience, you can then effectively broaden your value proposition to that customer, and potentially extend the offering and switch from more of a commodity product to much more value-added proposition, I suspect.
That's one part of the story. The other part of the story is that you can increase its quality massively by directly interacting with the customer. So if you are having a third party being the kind of agent in between yourself and the client, you do not have direct influence on how he or she is actually interacting with the clients. If you do it yourself, then you have much more power and control over that customer experience. And also, we are working for a technology company. New technologies actually enabled a lot of that direct interaction in the last couple of years. And that also plays a huge aspect in the current move towards direct-to-consumer, I would say.
Okay, great. So I guess in moving to traditional sort of supply chain where you're moving the producer of the good or the services traditionally in a B2B model, selling to wholesalers or retailers, now selling direct to customers, you're creating by definition a channel conflict. So if you're a new startup, that's easy, right? So I can sell razor blades to you on a subscription-based service. We've got some great examples from that in the market. But if I'm an established player, like for instance the automotive industry, or have an established value chain, I'm now disintermediating potentially my channel partners. Right? How are companies thinking about that, and how they're dealing with that challenge?
Yeah, that is absolutely a big challenge at the moment for the established OEMs, because there are new players like Tesla or NIO coming into the automotive world, and because they are starting greenfield, they can directly start with the models that they would like to use. With the established OEMs, they have strong ties to their third-party dealer network, and they have to find clever technology, but also legal constructs how to deal with that problem, and to take everybody onto that journey. And the automotive industry is currently looking into establishing agency contracts with all of their third-party retailers, which means that the classical model was that the actual metal, the car, was sold to the dealers, and then the dealers sold that on to the end customer. In the future, the third-party retailer is actually acting as an agent, which means that the end consumer contract is between the OEM and the consumer directly, and the agent gets a reward for that.
Effectively, and the OEM then takes on the cost of inventory, I suspect.
Yes.
And the agent effectively moves to a more of a commission sales-based approach, right?
Exactly right.
For the service that they provided.
And there's a huge task to be done to now figure out what are the new rules of the game, right? Because you said it right with the inventory. The OEM now owns the inventory, so that's good for the retailer. But on the other hand, of course, the OEMs want also, because they have to bear that burden, they want something back, and then they are currently renegotiating the margins that they are handing to the third-party retailers, and that's causing some issues in the dealer networks at the moment.
Yeah, and I guess that's a big challenge in terms of a shift to make, where you go from a customer base of maybe a couple of hundred, a couple of thousand, to a couple of million in terms of orders of magnitude, complexity of fulfillment, and how do you create that direct one-to-one relationship with that end customer?
Yes.
So there's a whole, that's kind of a different game to be in, right, compared to
Yeah, it's a huge shift for the OEMs. They all of a sudden have to do things that they haven't done in the past, and they also don't have the capabilities yet in order to deal directly with the customers. And that's another challenge that they are currently facing, that they have to build up these new capabilities, and they also have to learn how to directly interact with customers. And we can already hear in the market that in some cases, customers are already complaining because they are used to something different and they don't get the right level of service anymore.
Yeah, and I guess it's a logistical headache to see how do you used to ship 100 products to so-and-so and the distribution network would take care of it. So I guess there's both infrastructure challenges and supply chain challenges around how you manage that.
Yeah, and I would also say a lot of communication challenges, because the customer, he doesn't want to differentiate, am I currently talking to the dealer or am I currently talking to the OEM? For him, it's one brand, and he always wants to have one perfect customer experience, no matter also what channel they are using. Is it a direct channel, for example, the website that they are interacting with that is run by the OEM, or is it the local dealership? And that also needs to be orchestrated somehow. And of course, technology needs to play a huge part in that to enable this.
Yeah, and I guess one of the benefits is if you own that relationship with the end customer before, as a B2B relationship, you never have had a relationship with the end customer. Once they've bought your product, that relationship can continue, right? And you can look to expand that to other areas. So in the car example, I guess there's value-added services you can provide. If it's in this new world of connected vehicles, there's additional over-the-air updates and things you can provide.
That is, I would say, exactly the motivation why the OEMs are now spending so much money and time and efforts into introducing these agency models and direct-to-consumer kind of formats, because they have realized that the future business is also an as-a-service business. And they know that they need to own the customer relationship and all the customer data in the future. Otherwise, they will lose out on certain value-added businesses. And because they don't want to lose that business, they are now getting ready to be able to own the customer data and to own the direct link to, or the relationship with the customers. And as you can imagine, the retailers are not all happy about this.
Yeah, because they get pretty much constrained in terms of what the value add is in that proposition. But actually linking to that, because the other value add is the after-sales service and support. Where so in the motor vehicle kind of industry, that becomes a key factor around how do you service the vehicle? What's the relationship between the agent and the OEM in that instance? How do you see that changing?
Yeah, so in the old world, you were making money through selling the car and then somehow hoping that after 3 years' time, somebody's coming back and would buy from your brand again, right? These days, it's much more complex. The sheer sell of the vehicle is only a portion of the overall money that you are making. It's the after-sales services which are also important. But now with EV technology, also the after-sales services are reducing. So other value-added services and mobility as a service offers are becoming much more important to the overall profit and loss of an OEM. And if that means you need a constant communication and constant touch points with the customer, and you want to bring him into your ecosystem, and we all know that from Apple, for example, you interact quite a bit with Apple during the whole day. And that means that once you have bought into the ecosystem, you stay in that ecosystem and you book again and again services, and also then when it comes to the renewal of the car, because you don't want to leave that ecosystem because you have everything already in that ecosystem. You stay in there and you get a new car from the same manufacturer. That is the big bet that currently the OEMs are taking.
Yeah, and I guess there's a different almost business model associated with that in terms of, as you alluded to, almost selling a vehicle as a service, although you could argue is really as a service, is just a leasing subscription model by another name. But I guess it's the value-added things that you can put on top of that platform, which becomes interesting.
Yeah.
And I guess if you've got the data on how your end customer is using the product, right, you can start to do some interesting things. For instance, I guess you could get into providing car insurance based on driver habits and behaviors, amongst other things, I'm sure.
Yes. No, absolutely right. And I wouldn't go that far that I would say that kind of data is a new fuel and everything is data, but certainly data will help to identify new sources of business going forward. And also systems will help to unlock that business potential going forward.
Cool. And do you think it's different for other consumer goods, like that are trying to go down this route between everywhere from foodstuffs to consumer products to luxury goods? Do you think it's the same applies?
Yeah. So we have seen quite many examples in the last couple of years. So for example, Nike, they went to not yet pure direct-to-consumer model, but they are pushing it really hard because they have identified that going through their own channels is costing them less money. And they have increased their margins significantly through that step. And they are prioritizing all the direct channels over all the third-party channels, and they are actually trying to eliminate the third-party channels step by step. Another example would actually be Apple. Apple also had or felt the pressure to introduce their direct links to the customer when they established the Apple stores. They did it for a different reason. They didn't necessarily wanted to cut cost, but they wanted to massively improve their customer experience and to give people a space to come to show that actually Apple products are working and that they have the confidence that you can actually switch from a Windows-based computer to Apple, and that they have people on site that can actually help you with that transition. And through that, they actually saved the company. And now you see how bright that future was that they were creating back then.
Yeah, we all thought they were a bit crazy when they started opening up stores, right? And now you see how it. What do you think the percentage of channel for people who are making that transition between direct to consumer versus traditional channels? What do you think the percentage switch is? Is it going to be 100% direct to consumer, or do you think there will always be a place for the existing channel and to coexist?
I would say it really depends on your strategy that you are driving as a manufacturer. So for example, Nike, I think they will probably end up in the end with pure direct to consumer. Other players like Apple, they actually embrace also still the third party retailers, like Gravis, for example. And they actually coexist, or the different channels, the direct and the non-direct channels coexist with each other. And they are having a different philosophy. They want to perfectly support the channel that the customer is using, because their highest aim is a perfect customer experience, and the customer should choose what he or she feels most comfortable with.
And be able to serve them across without creating those conflicts.
Yeah. Another interesting example is also McDonald's, I think, because McDonald's is also a franchisee model with third-party investors owning the actual shops. But they also wanted to enter the digital space. And they created their McDonald's app, where you can hop on, you can find a store, you can actually pre-order, or you can actually order in the store, or before you arrive, your burgers, and you can do the actual purchase. But the app is run by the national sales company, or the kind of the OEM of the food industry. The shop is then owned and run by a local investor. But they work really seamlessly together, because you can see you order it on your app, and it comes out of the store locally in your branch that you are currently visiting. So I think this is a good best practice example, how it really can fit together and how you can enable direct to consumer communication, but still empower your existing network.
And your existing distribution franchisees in that example.
Yeah. So it doesn't mean that direct to consumer always means that the local branches are actually losing out. It can also be a fruitful combination.
That's a great example, actually. So yes, you've got some really good examples and overview there. Let's quickly switch tack in terms of a couple of questions, a bit more about you.
Sure.
I have my 10 questions here. Quick, rapid fire AOB. So coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Morning or evening?
Evening.
All consultants right now. Yes or perhaps?
Yes.
Iron Man or Superman?
Superman.
Disruption or transformation?
Disruptional transformation.
Or and transformation. Okay, you're not making a choice. Facebook or Instagram?
Instagram.
You're an Instagrammer. Okay. A live concert or live streaming?
Live concert.
Cloud or GDPR?
Cloud.
Consult or constraint?
Consult.
Laissez-faire or laissez-aller? If I pronounce that correct.
Laissez-faire.
All right, fantastic. So maybe that's a good segue to my next kind of question is, you obviously, you spent a long time of your career in automotive, primarily focused on sales, distribution, marketing. What's kind of been your biggest kind of challenge or failure in terms of that you've learned from, being able to apply to drive success?
Yeah, so that was definitely during my time at Jaguar Land Rover when I was in the UK. I was back then the global digital and CRM director. And we had a global template of a Salesforce and SAP kind of tech stack that we were trying to force onto the markets globally. And the failure was that in the beginning we said, look, this is a headquarter decision. This is a global template. You have to use it. And no matter what you do, this is now the kind of the system and the solution that you have to adopt globally. And that didn't work with the markets because the rollout was too slow and people were starting creating shadow IT and coming up with their own solutions. And I guess what we learned was that first of all, the power of change management and taking people onto the journey and making sure that you don't have the not invented here principle. That was the first learning. And the second was that there's actually more flexibility than you guess at the beginning, that you do not have to choose from all global and one global template and that's it, or everybody does whatever they want, a local solution. There are also kind of shadows of gray in between. So for example, you can go with a standardized data model so that you enable the reporting and maybe also the data analytics that you want to do in headquarter. But at the same time, you are not giving up the agility of the markets and also the kind of adoption to local nuances that you sometimes need of these systems.
And I guess in terms of direct to consumer, I guess this sort of applies in terms of how you, if you're a global brand, how you roll that out into the individual markets, right?
Yeah. So at the moment, I mean, we are actively helping several automotive OEMs with their rollout of their direct to consumer sales models, and we are heavily interacting or are actually helping with the rollouts locally in the markets. So we are in between the headquarter and the markets. And what we are doing there is to consult actually both sides, to work with each other and to make it work and to find these kind of right level of gray in between the black and the white in order to make it in the end successful and make it successful for both parties. That headquarter is getting what they are trying to achieve in terms of direct to consumer and a better customer experience. And at the same time, they are not losing the markets and the buy-in and the agility of the local entities.
Yeah, and I guess it's also about having, to some extent, what is the platform that you can scale globally from both a cost perspective and a speed of deployment. But then to your point, how do you provide a level of flexibility to then localize and regionalize that platform for the local requirements and local market demand?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge which we're all living through in terms of our day jobs. So in terms of, if you kind of cast your mind forward then, you've been doing some really interesting work around future strategies, what companies do. Where do you think this is going to go? We're in a transition at the moment, it feels like, where some industries are further ahead on this direct-to-consumer journey.
Yeah.
And some startups are way ahead and kind of almost demonstrating what the art of the possible is. Where do you think this is going to go in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think the next thing after direct to consumer, and when OEMs and also other industries have managed to directly interact with their consumers, the next level is that they will create communities, true communities of brand ambassadors. And they can then be used for two reasons. A, to be kind of a sounding board for what services or digital services are actually resonating with the target group, so they can help creating the right level of services. And then combined with, for example, a service factory that they have to or can establish, they can then rapidly come to an MVP stage, and then that MVP stage can directly being tried out with the same community again. And that, of course, is also another benefit of the community, that it actually lends warmly with some friends who are willing to use the services, and then ultimately also hopefully paying for these services. So it's also a distribution channel that is generating then revenue.
Yes. So you almost create a super fan base that helps to shape the future product requirements or demand for what they want, the customer base wants to see, right? And they effectively become your product innovation kind of function, really.
Exactly, but you have to remember that you actually have to actively manage also that community. So you have to invest into it. You have to create content that is relevant for them, and you really have to take them serious. And you cannot just push things. This is kind of old school marketing, that you are just pushing messages out there and you hope that they hit somebody. What consumers of the future want is a true dialogue, and then they want to be taken serious by the brands. If you are managing that, I think you can also be successful in this space and create, again, additional revenue sources for you.
Yeah. And in terms of embracing that vision, I guess there's the alternative option is everyone sells stuff through a platform like an Amazon, right? Amazon Prime, and you give up that sort of brand direct to consumer channel. Just I'm just going to sell through an intermediary like Amazon. What do you think the decision criteria should be for those two options?
I think the question is, do you have a brand that is strong enough to actually create your own fan base, and people are willing to kind of add this additional ecosystem to their everyday lives and invest the time into it? If you are a strong brand, you can do that. But if you are a brand that is just being consumed, and it doesn't really matter what kind of name it is or what heritage you have or what brand promise you have, I think it will just be go on Amazon and be purchased through these standard channels.
Yeah, and is it one or the other, or do you think you could do both?
It's interesting because Apple, I saw in Germany, they actually sold some of their earphones in Aldi, which is a low-cost grocery store. So they somehow managed that they can sell, I don't know, 5,000 euro computers in their own shops with a super branded environment, and at the same time have products that are a little bit lower cost and a lower entry price through a low cost reselling channel. And in the end, the customer still feels good and has this Apple feeling when they are unpacking the package. And I'm sure every Apple user knows still this moment when you're getting your new iPhone and you're opening it up and unwrapping it. Yeah, this is of course all planned, and they put a lot of effort into this, that this really feels good, and they are successful in using several channels at once.
And I guess it's something towards aspiring to. Yeah.
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, last question, Jens. As someone who's spent pretty much most of his career in the automotive industry, what car do you drive?
I cannot disclose because some of the OEMs might not be happy with that answer. No, but I'm dreaming still of a Porsche GT3 RS. I'm actively working on that. Hopefully you will help me with that dream.
All right.
No, but seriously, that is one car that I'm still aspiring to drive one day. And I was exposed to it very early in my career, and it's still something in my head. And one day maybe I will be there.
And then you get to use that professional racing driver license of yours to good use.
It all comes together then.
And perhaps at Nuremberg. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Fantastic. It's been lovely talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.